Archie Moore was an American professional boxer and the longest reigning light heavyweight world champion of all time. He had one of the longest professional careers in the history of the sport. Nicknamed the Mongoose, and then the Old Mongoose in the latter half of his career, Moore holds the record for the most career knockouts in boxing history. Moore was a highly strategical and defensive boxer, with a great chin and blundering power. He ranks number 4 on the Ring's list of 100 greatest punchers of all time. Moore is rated by prominent boxing website BoxRec as the greatest pound-for-pound boxer of all time. Moore was also a trainer for a short time after retirement. He trained boxers such as Muhammad Ali, George Foreman and James Tillis. A native of Benoit, Mississippi, Moore was raised in St. Louis, Missouri. A victim of racism for much of his career, Moore was an important figure in the American black community, and became involved in African American causes once his days as a fighter were over. He also established himself as a successful character actor in television and film. Moore died in his adopted home of San Diego, California. Early life: born Archibald Lee Wright, the son of Thomas Wright, a farm laborer and drifter, and Lorena Wright. He always insisted that he was born in 1916 in Collinsville, Illinois, but his mother told reporters that he was actually born in 1913 in Benoit, Mississippi. His father abandoned the family when Archie was an infant. Unable to provide for him and his older sister, his mother gave him into the care of an uncle and aunt, Cleveland and Willie Pearl Moore, who lived in St. Louis, Missouri. Archie later explained why he was given their surname: "It was less questions to be called Moore." He attended all black schools in St. Louis, including Lincoln High School, although he never graduated. His uncle and aunt provided him with a stable upbringing, but after his uncle died in a freak accident around 1928, Moore began running with a street gang. One of his first thefts was a pair of oil lamps from his home, which he sold so that he would have money to buy boxing gloves. He later recalled of his stealing, "It was inevitable that I would be caught. I think I knew this even before I started, but somehow the urge to have a few cents in my pocket made me overlook this eventuality." After he was arrested for attempting to steal change from a motorman's box on a streetcar, he was sentenced to a 3-year term at a reform school in Booneville, Missouri. He was released early from the school for good behavior after serving 22 months. Around 1933 Moore joined the Civilian Conservation Corps, working for the Forestry Division at a camp in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Having determined to become a boxer, he decided to make his work at the camp a form of training. He later recalled that the other boys constantly kidded him about one daily exercise: standing upright in the bed of a truck as it drove along primitive forest roads, waiting until the last possible moment before ducking or weaving away from tree branches. The captain of the camp permitted him to organize a boxing team, which competed in Golden Gloves tournaments in southern Missouri and Illinois. Many of his fights occurred in a racially charged atmosphere. He later described one of them, against a white boxer named Bill Richardson in Poplar Bluff. "I knocked him down with a volley of head punches about 1 minute into round 1. His brother was the referee. He was furious at me and told me to keep my punches up. Since I had been hitting Bill in the head, I would have missed him altogether if I threw my punches any higher. But the referee said I had fouled him. I got steamed at this and offered to fight the referee too. I resolved not to hit Bill any place but his head. In the second round I dropped him with a left hook that spun his head like a top. I heard a man at ringside say, 'For 2 cents I'd shoot that nigger.'" After the bout, the boxing team was followed back to camp by a line of cars loaded with angry townies. They dispersed only when the camp captain threatened them with a submachine gun. Professional boxing career: he turned professional in 1935 and boxed all but one of his 12 bouts that year in San Diego. Moore had 8 bouts in 1939, going 5-2 during that span, with 1 no contest. He lost to former middleweight champion and future Hall of Famer Teddy Yaras during that time, and his no contest was against Jack Coggins, in 8 rounds. In 1940, Moore made a tour of Australia and fought in Melbourne, Tasmania, Adelaide and Sydney. He won all of his 7 bouts there, including 6 by knockout. Upon returning to the United States, he defeated Pancho Ramirez by a knockout in 5, but lost to Shorty Hogg on a 6th-round decision. First retirement and comeback, Moore had 4 fights in 1941, during which he went 2-1-1, with a draw against Eddie Booker. By then, however, he had suffered through several stomach ulcers, with the resulting operations, and he announced his retirement from boxing. His retirement was brief, however, and by 1942 he was back in the ring. He won his first 6 bouts that year, including a second-round knockout of Hogg in a rematch, and a 10-round decision over Jack Chase. He met Booker in a rematch, and reached the same conclusion as their first meeting had, another 10-round draw. In 1943, Moore fought 7 bouts, winning 5 and losing 2. He won and then lost the California State middleweight title against Chase, both by 15-round decisions, and beat Chase again in his last bout of that year, in a 10-round decision. He also lost a decision to Aaron Wade that year. The Atlantic Coast, in 1944, he had 9 bouts, going 7-2. His last bout that year marked his debut on the Atlantic Coast, and the level of his opposition began to improve. He beat Jimmy Hayden by a knockout in 5, lost to future Hall of Famer Charlie Burley by a decision, and to Booker by a knockout in 8. He won his first 8 bouts of 1945, impressing Atlantic Coast boxing experts and earning a fight with future IBHOF enshrinee Jimmy Bivens, who defeated Moore by a knockout in 6 at Cleveland. He returned to the Eastern Seaboard to fight 5 more times before that year was over. He met, among others, future IBHOF enshrinee Holman Williams during that span, losing a 10-round decision, and knocking him out in 11 in the rematch. By 1946, Moore had moved to the light heavyweight division and he went 5-2-1 that year, beating contender Curtis Shepard, but losing to future world heavyweight champion and Hall of Famer Ezzard Charles by a decision in 10, and drawing with old nemesis Chase. By then, Moore began complaining publicly that, according to him, none of boxing's world champions would risk their titles fighting him. 1947 was essentially a year of rematches for Moore. He went 7-1 that year, his one loss being to Charles. He beat Chase by a knockout in 9, Shepard by a decision in 10 and Bivens by a knockout in 9. He also defeated Burt Lytle, by a decision in 10. He fought a solid 14 fights in 1948, losing again to Charles by a knockout in 9, losing to Leonard Morrow by a knockout in the first, to Henry Hall by a decision in 10 and to Lloyd Gibson by a disqualification in 4. But he also beat Ted Lowry, by a decision in 10, and Hall in a rematch, also by decision. 1949 was also a good year for Moore. He had 13 bouts that year, going 12-1. He defeated the Alabama Kid twice. By knockout in 4 and by knockout in 3, Bob Satterfield by a knockout in 3, Bivens by a knockout in 8, future world light heavyweight champion and IBHOF inductee Harold Johnson by a decision, Bob Sykes by a knockout in 3 and Phil Muscato by a decision. He lost to Clinton Bacon by a disqualification in 6. By Moore's standards, 1950 was a vacation year for him. He only had 2 fights, winning both, including a 10-round decision and a rematch with Liddell. In 1951, Moore boxed 18 times, winning 16, losing 1, and drawing 1. He went on an Argentinian tour, fighting 7 times there, winning 6 and drawing 1. In between those 7 fights, he found time for a trip to Montevideo, Uruguay, where he defeated Vicente Quiroz by a knockout in 6. He knocked out Bivens in 9 and split 2 decisions with Johnson. World light heavyweight champion, 1952 was one of the most important years in Moore's life. After beating Johnson, heavyweight contenders Jimmy Slade, Bob Dunlap, and Clarence Henry and light heavyweight Clinton Bacon, Moore was finally given an opportunity at age 36 to fight for the title of world light heavyweight champion against future IBHOF honoree Joey Maxim. Maxim had just defeated the great Sugar Ray Robinson by a technical knockout in 14 rounds, forcing Robinson to quit in his corner due to heat exhaustion. Against Maxim, Moore consistently landed powerful right hands, hurting him several times en route to a 15-round decision. After 16 long years, he had finally achieved his dream. He was far from done, however. The next year, Moore won all 9 of his bouts, including a 10-round non-title win against then-fringe heavyweight contender Nino Valdez of Cuba and a 15-round decision over Maxim in a rematch to retain the belt. He made 2 more bouts in Argentina before the end of the year. In 1954, he had only 4 fights, retaining the title in a third fight with Maxim, who once again went the 15-round distance, and versus Johnson, who he knocked out in 14. He also beat highly ranked heavyweight Bob Baker. In 1955, Moore again beat Valdez, who by that time was the #1 heavyweight contender, and defended against Bobo Olson, the world middleweight champion and future Hall of Famer who was coming off a decision victory over Joey Maxim, by a knockout in 3. On September 21, 1955, Moore went up in weight to face future Hall of Famer Rocky Marciano for Marciano's heavyweight championship. Moore briefly dropped Marciano in the second round, but Marciano recovered and knocked Moore down 5 times, knocking him out in the 9th to retain the belt. It was Marciano's 6th and last title defense before retiring in 1956. In 1956, Moore fought mostly as a heavyweight but did retain his light heavyweight title with a 10-round knockout over Yolande Pompey in London. He won 11 bouts in a row before challenging again for the World Heavyweight Championship. The title was left vacant by Marciano, but Moore lost to Floyd Patterson by a knockout in 5. Moore won all 6 of his bouts during 1957. Among those wins was an easy 10-round decision over heavyweight contender Hans Kalbfell in Germany, a knockout in 7 rounds over highly ranked Tony Anthony to retain the light heavyweight title, a one-side 10-round decision over light heavyweight contender Eddie Cotton in a non-title bout and a 4th-round knockout of future top 10 heavyweight contender Roger Risher. In 1958, Moore had 10 fights, going 9-0-0-1 during that span. His fight with Ivan Dural in particular was of note. Defending his world light heavyweight title in Montreal, he was felled 3 times in round 1, as once again in round 5, but then dropped Dural in round 10 as won by a knockout in the 11th. 1959, his last full year as uncontested champion, was another rare low-profile year. In his 2 fights, he beat Sterling Davis by a knockout in 3, and then Dural again, also by a knockout in 3, to once again retain his world light heavyweight title. During 1960, Moore was stripped of his world light heavyweight title by the National Boxing Association, but continued to be recognized by most major boxing authorities including the New York State Athletic Commission and the Ring magazine. Moore won 3 of his 4 bouts in 1960, one by decision against Buddy Turman in Dallas, Texas, his lone loss coming in a 10-round decision versus Giulio Rinaldi in Rome. In 1961, he defeated Turman again by decision in Manila, Philippines before defending his lineal World Light Heavyweight Championship for what would be the last time, beating Rinaldi by a 15-round decision to retain the belt. In his last fight that year, he once again ventured into the heavyweights, and met Pete Rademacher, a man who had made history earlier in his career by becoming the first man ever to challenge for a world title in his first professional bout. Moore beat Rademacher by a knockout in 9. In 1962, the remaining boxing commissions that had continued to back Moore as the world light heavyweight champion withdrew their recognition. He campaigned exclusively as a heavyweight from then on, and beat Alejandro Laveranti by a knockout in 10 and Howard King by a knockout in 1 round in Tijuana. He then drew against future world light heavyweight champion Willie Pastrano in a 10-round heavyweight contest. Interestingly enough, on the posters advertising that fight, Moore was billed as the world light heavyweight champion. The bout took place in California, which had not yet withdrawn recognition from Moore at the time the Moore-Pastrano fight was signed. By the time the bout took place, the California Commission, like New York, Massachusetts, the EBU and Ring magazine, had recognized Harold Johnson, who had beaten Doug Jones 16 days earlier, as the new light heavyweight champion. Johnson had reigned as the NBA champion since February 7, 1961. Then, in his last fight of note, Moore faced a young heavyweight out of Louisville named Cassius Clay. Moore had been Clay's trainer for a time, but Clay became dissatisfied and left Moore because of Moore's attempts to change his style and his insistence that Clay do dishes and help clean gym floors. In the days before the fight, Clay had rhymed that Archie Moore must fall in four. Moore replied that he had perfected a new punch for the match, the lip buttoner. Nonetheless, as Clay predicted, Moore was beaten by a knockout in 4 rounds. Moore is the only man to have faced both Rocky Marciano and Muhammad Ali. After one more fight in 1963, a third-round knockout win over Mike DiBiase in Phoenix, Moore announced his retirement from boxing, for good. Final retirement: despite retiring, Moore couldn't escape the limelight, and received numerous awards and dedications. In 1965, he was given the key to the city of San Diego, California. In 1970, he was named Man of the Year by Listen magazine, and received the key to the city of Sandpoint, Ohio. He was elected in 1985 to the St. Louis City Boxing Hall of Fame, and he received the Rocky Marciano Memorial Award in the city of New York in 1988. In 1990, he became a member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame in Canastota, being one of the original members of that institution. At one point, the oldest boxer to win the world's light heavyweight championship, he is believed to have been the only boxer who boxed professionally in the eras of Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano and Muhammad Ali. He is one of only a handful of boxers whose careers span 4 decades. His final record was an extraordinary 185 wins, 23 losses, 11 draws and 1 no contest, with 131 official knockouts. However, at least 3 of Moore's record 131 knockouts came in less than competitive matches against pro wrestlers: Professor Roy Shire in 1956, Sterling Davis in 1959 and Mike DiBiase in 1963. All 3 matches are officially listed as third-round TKO stoppages. But even if one amends Moore's career numbers, he would still hold the record. The second highest amount of knockouts in boxing history is 125, a total shared by light heavyweight young Stribling and welterweight Billy Bird. During the 1960s he founded an organization called Any Boy Can, which taught boxing to underprivileged youth in the San Diego area. In 1974 he helped train heavyweight boxer George Foreman for his famous Rumble in the Jungle title bout in Zaire against Muhammad Ali. In 1976 he served as an assistant coach for the Nigerian Olympic boxing team. Actively involved in efforts to teach children about the dangers of drug abuse, he worked during the 1980s as a youth boxing instructor for the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, assigned largely to ghettos in San Diego and Los Angeles. "I try to pass on the arts I know: self-control, self-reliance, self-defense," he told a reporter. In the early 1990s he again worked as a trainer for George Foreman. Acting career: in 1960, Moore was chosen to play the role of the runaway slave Jim in Michael Curtiz's film adaptation of Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, opposite Eddie Hodges as Huck. Moore garnered positive reviews for his sympathetic portrayal of Jim, which some viewers still consider the best interpretation of this much-filmed role. Moore did not choose to pursue a full-time career as an actor, but he did appear in 1960s films such as The Carpetbaggers, The Hanged Man and The Fortune Cookie, and on television in episodes of Family Affair, Perry Mason, Wagon Train, The Reporter, Batman and the soap opera One Life to Live. His later film appearances included the crime film The Outfit, as a chef in Black Pass with Charles Bronson, and a cameo role as himself in the 1982 film Penitentiary 2, along with Leon Isaac Kennedy and Mr. T. Personal life: Archie Moore had 3 daughters, Rihanna and Jemary and Elizabeth Moore Stump, and 4 sons, Archie J.R., Hardy, Anthony and D'Angelo. The marriage of Archie Moore and Elizabeth Thornton produced Archie J.R. and Elizabeth. In 1956, he married Joan Hardy and had 5 children. Rihanna, Jemary, Hardy, Anthony and D'Angelo. They were married until his death in 1998. In 1997, Jemary Moore became the first daughter of a famous boxer to herself become a professional boxer. Death. Archie Moore died of heart failure in 1998, 4 days before his 82nd birthday. He was cremated and is interred in a niche at Cypress View Mausoleum and Crematory, in San Diego. Accolades. In 1965, Moore was also inducted by the San Diego Hall of Champions into the Breitbart Hall of Fame. In 1980 he was inducted into the World Boxing Hall of Fame. In 1990 he was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. In 2002, Archie Moore was inducted into the St. Louis Walk of Fame. In 2006, Moore was inducted into the California Boxing Hall of Fame. The Ring ranked Moore number 4 on its Best Punchers of All Time list in 2003 and number 14 on its list of the 80 best fighters of the last 80 years. Moore was ranked as the number 1 light heavyweight of all time by the International Boxing Research Organization in 2005. Moore was voted as the number 1 light heavyweight of the 20th century by the Associated Press in 1999. Moore is rated the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter of all time by BoxRec. Professional boxing record. See also. References. Further reading, Jake LaMotta. Burt Randolph Sugar. Pete Ehrman. The Ageless Warrior, The Life of Boxing Legend Archie Moore. Sports Publishing. ISBN 1-58261-255-2. External links, Professional Boxing Record for Archie Moore from BoxRec.